The date is April 18th, 1943. The sun has just begun to rise over the vast Pacific Ocean. The water glimmers with faint strokes of silver, and the horizon stretches endlessly, like a canvas waiting to be painted with fire and thunder. Far below the clouds, a squadron of P-38 Lightnings cuts low across the waves. Their engines rumble in unison, each propeller churning the humid air and leaving thin trails of mist in their wake. Among them sits First Lieutenant Rex Barber. The cockpit is stiflingly hot, the sun pressing against the glass canopy, the metal frame around him radiating heat like an oven. Sweat beads across his forehead, rolling down his temples, but his eyes never leave the skies ahead. He knows why he's here. This mission is unlike any other. It is more than patrol, more than escort, more than combat. It is history in motion. The name hangs over them all like a storm cloud. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor. The man who had promised with sharp words and confidence that he would dictate peace at the White House itself. For the American pilots, this is no ordinary mission. It is vengeance wrapped in steel and fire. The formation presses onward. The coastline of Bougainville creeps into view, its jungles dark and restless. A green sea rising from the blue. Barber scans the skies, his heartbeat quickening, searching for movement in the haze above. Intelligence had been precise, too precise to ignore. One Betty bomber flanked by two groups of 3 Zero fighters. The time, the place, the route, all known in advance. The Americans had gambled everything on the idea that Yamamoto would fly exactly as expected. And so, they came prepared. 12 Lightnings soaring high, their purpose to sweep the skies clean, to cut down the Japanese escorts before they could react. But 4 men only, a hand-picked killer group, would bear the true burden. Strike at the bomber carrying Yamamoto himself. The plan was elegant. The plan was daring. The plan, if it succeeded, could alter the very course of the war. As the coastline sharpens in the distance, a voice crackles over the radio. Urgent, tense, alive with adrenaline. Bogies, 11 o'clock high. And then, as if the clouds themselves were torn open, enemy aircraft emerge. 6 Zeros, 2 Betty bombers. For a heartbeat, the American pilots are stunned. The script has changed. The intelligence was wrong. The careful balance of strategy wavers. Which one of them carries Yamamoto? Which is the decoy? And which is the prize? The answer doesn't matter. The decision is made. We'll have to take them both. Throttle levers slam forward, engines roar, and the hunters begin their deadly dive. Engines howl. The P-38 split into their roles, a choreography of war practiced and planned. 12 Lightnings climb steeply, their silver wings glinting in the sunlight, rising like guardians to claim the high ground. From above, they will rain down protection, a shield against the Zero fighters sure to swarm the skies. But for the 4 men below, there is no shield, only the razor's edge of fate. Rex Barber feels his pulse drum in his ears. The plan was simple. Strike fast, strike hard, cut the head from the serpent. But already the serpent has grown 2 heads. 2 Betty bombers, 2 possible Yamamotos. And then, As if fate had not already stacked the odds against them, trouble brews inside the formation. First Lieutenant Besby Holmes fights with his aircraft. The drop tanks, meant to fall cleanly away to lighten his lightning for battle, remain stubbornly fixed beneath his wings. "Give me a second," Holmes calls out, his voice strained over the radio. "I'll tear my tanks off." The maneuver is reckless. He dives, banking sharply, shaking the P-38 violently in an attempt to free the heavy burden. Fuel sloshes inside the tanks, the lightning wobbling in protest. Rex Barber's eyes widen. Holmes is slipping from formation, losing position at the very moment their four-man strike group is needed whole. "Ray, go with him!" The order is sharp. Wingman Raymond Hine responds instantly, angling his aircraft to follow Holmes to shield him from the inevitable Zero attack, and just like that, half the strike group is gone, from 4 to 2. Barber exhales slowly, steadying his breath. Their mission has gone from difficult to nearly impossible. Double the bombers, half the hunters. But there is no turning back. Ahead, the Japanese formation grows clearer. The twin Betty bombers, green shadows against the sky, march forward in rigid precision. Their Zero escorts weave protectively around them, hawks circling their prized prey. Inside one of those bombers, perhaps in the left, perhaps in the right, sits the most hunted man in the Pacific. Barber knows. Every pilot knows. Hell itself would freeze solid before they let that man escape. He grips the control column tighter, his gloves slick with sweat. This is it. This is the moment history will remember, and it will be written in fire. The Pacific sky erupts. Bogies, 11 o'clock high. The radio crackles with urgency, but the warning is hardly needed. They can already see them. 6 zeros, sharp and deadly, emerge from the clouds like predators. Their wings glitter under the sun, a promise of violence in every dive. The American formation jolts. The plan is dissolving. They expected 1 bomber, but here are 2. They expected 3 zeros, but here are 6. Confusion buzzes through the radios. Which one is Yamamoto's? No answer, no certainty, no time. Rex Barber narrows his eyes. We'll have to take them both. The 4-man killer flight is now only 2. Barber and Lamphere, lone hunters in a sky filled with fangs. Behind them, the 12 high-cover lightnings peel off, climbing steeply, leaving Barber and his wingman to plunge forward to meet the bombers head-on. Engines scream, throttles slam open. The air rushes faster, the jungle coast of Bougainville swelling beneath them. But the Japanese are not blind. Inside the Betty carrying Yamamoto, Chief of Staff Matome Ugaki stirs from half-sleep. His head lolls against the window until a shadow flashes past. A Zero races across their nose, wagging its wings frantically. Ugaki frowns. What is he? The radio operator shouts, "Dive! Dive!" The Betty lurches downward, the officers inside gripping whatever they can, their stomachs slamming against their ribs. Ugaki is pressed back in his seat, eyes wide as the bomber plummets. Outside, the Zeros break formation, 3 of them diving straight at Barber and Lamphere. Silver and green streaks converge, the sky a battlefield in an instant. Barber steadies his sights. No more hesitation. There is only steel, gunfire, and the thin line between life and death. The clash is sudden. 3 Zeros streak down, each a predator with fangs bared. Lamphere pulls up sharply. "I'll take the fighters!" His P-38 surges upward, guns already spitting bright tracers. Barber dives on alone. The world tilts, sky and sea blending together until the jungle canopy is rushing up toward him. Behind, Lamphere's duel erupts. Japanese tracers arc through the air, buzzing past his wings like hornets. Bullets smack into his fuselage, drumming on metal. He doesn't flinch. He holds the trigger. His 4.50 calibers roar, a curtain of fire slashing the path ahead. The Zeros break away, but not before one's wingtip grazes Lamphere's fire. The fighter spins, vanishing below the clouds. Barber doesn't look back. Ahead of him, the bombers split. 2 Betty silhouettes veer off in opposite directions. Which one? Which carries Yamamoto? No time. He picks one and pushes. Throttle wide open. Engines howl. The jungle beneath seems close enough to touch. A sudden streak cuts across his canopy. A tracer. Another. Then another. A Zero has latched onto him. The sky behind erupts with green flashes as the Japanese fighter spits fire. Rounds slam into Barber's tail. Metal tears. The plane shudders. Every nerve screams at him to break off, but Barber forces himself to stay on course. The Betty looms larger, its engines glowing with heat, its tail gun flashing desperately. Barber grits his teeth. He locks his sights. He pulls the trigger. 50 caliber rounds and 20mm shells thunder forward, tearing through the bomber's skin. Panels rip away. Flames lick from an engine cowling. Oil sprays back, splattering Barber's windshield. Still, he doesn't let go. Even as more rounds slam into his lightning, he keeps his finger pressed, pouring death into the enemy plane. For an instant, he feels certain. If this is the end, at least Yamamoto goes with him. The Betty bursts into flames. Barber barely pulls up, dodging a collapsing wingtip as it tumbles toward the jungle below. Smoke curls into the sky, black and thick. The sound of burning metal fills his cockpit. He exhales sharply. No time to celebrate. Another bomber waits, still high above the waves. 3 Zeros dive from the sun, their guns blaze, tracers cutting lines of fire across the sky. Barber twists, dives, and rolls. The P-38 responds, metal creaking under stress, bullets pinging off the fuselage. Holmes and Hine appear ahead, their lightnings roaring into the fray. Hope surges. The 3 enemy fighters hesitate, facing the combined firepower of 3 lightnings. Barber takes aim at the second Betty. The bomber sways, its engines coughing smoke. He fires. Rounds tear through the fuselage. The plane shudders violently. The rear gunner opens up, tracer fire snapping past Barber's canopy. But he holds steady, lining up a final devastating volley. A stream of tracer rounds finds the fuel tanks. Flames ignite. The bomber explodes, fire cascading across the water below. Barber's P-38 rocks from the shockwave. Flames lick past the cockpit, but he survives. The immediate danger is over. Holmes and Hine regroup, their engines roaring like thunder. The Zeros retreat, dispersed and battered, leaving the 3 American pilots in control of the skies. Barber checks his instruments. Adrenaline still spikes through his veins. Yamamoto is gone, he mutters. The mission is accomplished, but the toll of the battle is clear in every dent and scratch on their planes. A brief moment of silence follows. The vast Pacific stretches below, quiet now except for the sound of wind over metal. Barber allows himself one deep breath. Then the order crackles over the radio. Everyone get your ass home. The squadron begins their cautious return, wary of stragglers but aware they've achieved what they came for. The P-38s cut across the Pacific, engines whining against the wind. Barber keeps his eyes on the horizon, scanning for any sign of remaining enemy aircraft. The adrenaline slowly ebbs, leaving a deep, tense fatigue. Holmes and Hine fly alongside, trailing smoke from minor hits. Their planes bear the scars of the battle, bullet holes and scorched metal glinting in the sunlight. Below, the ocean stretches endlessly, waves catching the sun's reflection like shattered glass. Suddenly, a flicker catches Barber's eye. A column of black smoke rises from the water. He squints through the canopy, recognizing the wreckage of a downed Betty. He banks sharply, descending toward the wreckage. Holmes and Hine follow. In the water, a lone figure clings to debris. Barber's heart skips. It's Matome Ugaki, battered but alive. They circle, assessing. Ugaki waves weakly, grateful for the sight of friendly faces. Holmes drops low, sweeping his tail to create a safe corridor. Barber edges closer. Ugaki struggles to keep afloat, blood streaking his face, salty water choking his lungs. Barber gestures. "Hold on, we've got you." He radios for instructions, relaying coordinates for a rescue aircraft. Hine flies cover, keeping watch for any enemy planes. The ocean is silent, except for the roar of their engines and the cries of the rescued officer. Minutes feel like hours. Finally, a flying boat appears on the horizon. A ladder is lowered. Ugaki climbs aboard, shivering and exhausted. Barber watches, tension easing. One life saved in the chaos of war. Back in the sky, the P-38s regroup. Holmes and Hine exchange relieved nods. Barber takes a deep breath, glancing down at the endless blue beneath them. They turn for home. The mission is over. Yamamoto has been killed. Ugaki has survived, and the Pacific stretches quietly ahead, as if acknowledging the cost of the day. The P-38s roar homeward, exhausted engines straining under the weight of battle. Barber glances at Holmes and Hine, both battered but holding formation. The Pacific stretches endlessly below, its waves now calm compared to the chaos of hours ago. On the radio, the squadron leader crackles through, "Everyone report status." Mission accomplished. Barber's voice is steady, though fatigued. All targets neutralized. Minor damage. Returning to base. Hine's P-38 shudders under the strain, bullets still embedded in the fuselage. He grits his teeth, pushing the aircraft onward despite the pain. Holmes leans forward, scanning the horizon, relieved to see no enemy aircraft following. The squadron slowly reforms, tightening formation as they cross into safer airspace. Below, the wreckage of the Betty bombers is visible, black smoke rising from the water where the planes fell. Barber's thoughts linger on Yamamoto, the man whose death marked a turning point in the Pacific War. The mood in the P-38s is somber yet triumphant. Each pilot reflects on the lives lost and the danger survived. Hours pass and Bougainville fades behind them. The sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the cockpit. Upon arrival at the airfield, ground crews rush forward, helping the pilots to guide their damaged planes safely to the tarmac. Barber steps out, legs unsteady but determined. Holmes and Hine follow, faces streaked with sweat and soot. Medics tend to the pilots, checking for injuries, while officers take detailed reports. The commanding officer approaches, saluting Barber. "First Lieutenant, outstanding work today. Your actions saved countless lives and achieved a critical objective." Barber nods, glancing at the remaining squadron. Each man carries the weight of the mission, yet pride shines through their exhaustion. News of Yamamoto's death spreads rapidly. The American forces celebrate, while the Japanese military mourns their revered admiral. Ugaki's miraculous survival becomes a story of endurance and luck. He quietly recovers, haunted by the loss of his commander and by his own survival. For Barber, Holmes, and Hine, the mission leaves scars, physical and emotional. Yet they also carry the pride of having completed what was deemed impossible. As night falls, the pilots sit together, reflecting on the day, on the lives taken and saved, and on the fragile line between victory and tragedy. The Pacific sky fades to dark, but their courage burns brightly, etched forever in the history of the war. Hours pass and Bougainville fades behind them. The endless stretch of the Pacific below, once a chaotic battlefield of tracer fire, smoke, and falling aircraft, now lies calm and deceptively serene. Barber's eyes, scanning the horizon, linger on the small ripples of the ocean, each wave a reminder of the destruction that occurred only hours ago. The sun climbs higher, bathing the damaged P-38s in harsh light that highlights every dent, scorch mark, and hole in their airframes. The smell of burned fuel, gunpowder, and sweat hangs heavy in the cockpits. Holmes, seated slightly behind, tightens his grip on the control stick, still feeling the echo of every bullet impact and the violent shudders of his aircraft. Even Hine, though quieter than usual, lets out a low sigh of relief, tension leaving his shoulders in small increments as they glide over the vast blue expanse. For the first time in hours, there is silence over the radio. An eerie, almost sacred calm that contrasts sharply with the chaos that preceded it. Upon arrival at the airfield, ground crews rush forward with urgency, though not the frantic panic of battle. They wave flags and signal the damaged aircraft into precise landing patterns. Barber guides his P-38 down the final stretch, every wheel touch on the tarmac sending a jolt through the airframe and into his already weary arms. Holmes follows closely, wings wobbly under the strain of their battle damage, and Hine brings up the rear, trailing smoke from a minor fuel leak caused by enemy rounds. Mechanics and medics leap forward, coordinating the landing, stabilizing the planes, and simultaneously tending to pilots for cuts, burns, and exhaustion. The airfield is a controlled chaos of hoses, stretchers, and shouted orders, every person moving in a precise rhythm honed by months of wartime experience. Barber unbuckles himself and steps out of the cockpit, legs shaking from fatigue and adrenaline, every joint stiff from hours of gripping controls and evading enemy fire. Holmes and Hine exit similarly, faces streaked with sweat, soot, and traces of the smoke that had filled their cockpits, eyes wide with relief and disbelief at having survived the impossible. For a brief moment, they simply stand there, breathing in the salty sea air and the strange mix of relief and exhaustion that only someone who has stared death in the face can truly understand. News of Yamamoto's death spreads rapidly through the airfield and beyond. Communications officers, heads bent over teletypes, relay the information to headquarters and higher command. Each message carries with it the weight of a turning tide in the Pacific War. The loss of Japan's revered admiral a psychological blow to their forces. The American pilots received the news with a complex mixture of triumph, relief, and somber reflection. They had achieved the impossible, but not without seeing their comrades scarred and their aircraft battered. Ugaki's miraculous survival is noted quietly in the back of everyone's minds, a lingering reminder of the randomness of life and death in combat. He would recover slowly, haunted by Yamamoto's death and by his own survival, replaying the tracer fire, the engine roars and the death spirals of the bomber that carried his commander in his mind over and over again. For Barber, Holmes, and Hine, there is the physical recovery, the scratches, bruises, and strained muscles, but also the emotional and mental reckoning. They carry the memory of men who did not return, of aircraft reduced to fireballs and twisted metal, and of the thin line between heroism and tragedy. Their achievement will be recorded in dispatches, decorated with medals and praised in official reports, but the personal burden of what they witnessed remains with them long after the war has ended. As night falls over the Pacific base, the pilots gather quietly in a small mess hall, the day's adrenaline slowly ebbing into exhaustion and reflection. Outside, the moonlight glints off the ocean, casting long silvery streaks across the airfield and illuminating the battered planes parked in neat rows, some still smoking slightly from the day's battle. Barber leans back in his chair, drinking water, letting the silence speak for him. Holmes sits opposite, checking his weapons and carefully cleaning the accumulated grime and soot, his hands shaking slightly from fatigue and lingering adrenaline. Hine is quieter than usual, staring into nothingness, his mind replaying every maneuver, every evasive dive, every bullet and tracer that passed too close for comfort. They share no words at first, only the sound of utensils on metal plates and the distant hum of engines winding down in the hangars breaks the quiet. Slowly, stories begin to spill. Details of the chase, the near misses, the moments when they thought they would not survive, and the exhilaration of success. They talk about the men they saved, the enemy they defeated, and the incredible fragility of life in the cockpit. Though weary, a sense of pride threads through their words, binding them together in a silent acknowledgement of courage, sacrifice, and survival. The Pacific sky darkens outside, stars twinkling faintly above, mirroring the sparks of bravery, fear, and perseverance that had lit the air just hours before. In that quiet night, the pilots reflect on the razor-thin edge between victory and catastrophe, knowing that the events of today would stay with them forever. Etched into memory with every roar of an engine, every streak of tracer, and every flash of fire from the wreckage below. Dawn breaks over the Pacific airfield, casting long shadows across the damaged planes and tattered banners. The previous day's battle, though over, lingers in every corner. Smoke rising faintly from scorched runways, oil stains glinting in the morning sun, and spent shell casings scattered like breadcrumbs of chaos. Barber steps out of the mess hall, stretching muscles that are stiff from combat and hours of tension. Every joint protests, but there is an unmistakable weight of pride in his chest. Holmes follows, wiping soot from his face, eyes scanning the horizon, remembering the precise moment when the bomber they chased erupted into flames, the explosion casting an orange glow that illuminated the clouds and the trembling sea below. Hines, slower to rise, leans against the fuselage of his battered P-38, tracing the scars of enemy fire across the wing, each hole a reminder of close calls and miraculous survival. Commanders begin to gather, their crisp uniforms stark against the battered backdrop of the airfield. Reports have come in from every vantage point. Survivors from the downed Betty bombers, reconnaissance confirming Yamamoto's demise, and the status of all American aircraft. Barber is called to a briefing. Inside the command tent, maps are spread across tables dotted with tiny flags marking targets, enemy positions, and locations of skirmishes. Admiral Halsey's aides bustle in and out, carrying messages and updates, their footsteps echoing against the canvas walls. Barber listens as the gravity of the mission is laid bare. Yamamoto, orchestrator of Pearl Harbor, now lies dead at the hands of his squadron, a fact that will ripple across the Pacific, shifting morale, strategies, and perhaps even the course of the war. Medals are prepared. The Navy crosses with their gleaming bronze and silver catch the sunlight as they are polished and placed into presentation boxes. Barber, Holmes, and Hine are called forward. The ceremony is both solemn and triumphant, a tightrope walk between celebration and reflection. Each man receives his decoration, the metal cold and heavy in his hand, a tangible acknowledgement of skill, courage, and sacrifice. Holmes smiles, faint but genuine, as the ribbon is pinned to his chest. Hine, eyes distant, touches the medal with reverence, feeling both honor and the hollow pang of loss for those who did not return. Barber's gaze sweeps the horizon, knowing that the victory is bittersweet, that the price paid was steep, and that every gleaming medal carries a shadow of tragedy. News from headquarters arrives via radio. Dispatches confirm Yamamoto's death and report the meticulous reconstruction of events from eyewitness accounts and radar tracking. The story spreads quickly across the Pacific theater and then across the nation. Barber and his squadron become subjects of both military record and media fascination. Newspapers and radio broadcasts relay the daring attack, emphasizing the precision, courage, and audacity required to take down one of Japan's most revered leaders. pilots from other squadrons salute them in the mess halls, offering quiet congratulations and awe-laden whispers. Barber feels a strange mix of pride and discomfort. He had killed a man in combat, a necessary act of war, but one whose personal life and aspirations he had no knowledge of, leaving him to wrestle with the moral weight even amid the accolades. Meanwhile, on the Japanese side, the news lands like a thunderclap. Ugaki, recovering on the shore after clinging to wreckage for hours, receives updates with disbelief and sorrow. He writes feverishly in his diary, recounting every tracer, every evasive maneuver, every instant when death seemed inevitable. Even as he heals physically, his mind is a battlefield of regret, guilt, and mourning. The nation mourns Yamamoto publicly, holding elaborate ceremonies with fleets, military personnel, and civilians paying respects. The loss of such a figure creates a vacuum in leadership and strategy, sending ripples through Japanese command and shaking morale in a way that no ordinary battlefield defeat could accomplish. Back at the American airfield, the pilots begin routine debriefings, carefully reconstructing the entire encounter in meticulous detail. Maps are annotated, gun camera footage examined frame by frame, and each maneuver dissected. Lessons learned will inform future missions, improve tactics, and hopefully save lives. Barber recounts every split-second decision, every dive, every burst of fire, noting what worked and what could have been better. Holmes and Hine corroborate, occasionally adding detail about enemy responses, the behavior of the bombers, and the movements of the Zeros. Even small decisions, the timing of a turn, the angle of attack, the coordination between wingmen are analyzed and logged for posterity. As evening falls, Barber stands alone at the edge of the airfield, watching the sun dip beneath the horizon. The Pacific reflects streaks of pink, gold, and violet, a deceptive serenity masking the deadly skies that dominated the day. He thinks of the men who never made it back, of the bombs, tracers, and the sheer chaos that had unfolded just hours before. Though honored, he feels the weight of each life lost, and the immense responsibility carried by those who survive. The war will continue, battles yet to come, but today in this small corner of the Pacific, courage, precision, and the relentless will to succeed had changed history. And for Barber, Holmes, and Hine, the memory of the mission, the roar of engines, and the flash of gunfire will remain indelibly etched in their minds forever. The P-38s cut through the late afternoon sky, their silver bodies gleaming in the dying sun, engines humming with a controlled fury. Barber at the forefront scans the horizon for any lingering threats, each shadow over the waves a potential enemy. The adrenaline from the dogfight still thrums through his veins, and the smell of gunpowder and scorched metal lingers faintly in the cockpit. Beside him, Holmes and Hine maintain tight formation, wings almost brushing, a dance of precision born from countless hours of training and sheer necessity. Each pilot is acutely aware that any lapse could mean death, not for themselves alone, but for the squadron, the mission, and the legacy of their fallen comrades. Below, the Pacific stretches endlessly, a glittering expanse that belies the carnage above it. Wreckage from the downed Betty bombers floats intermittently, black smoke curling faintly from oil-slicked debris. Ugaki, clinging to a piece of fuselage, drifts slowly toward the shore, his body battered, muscles screaming, lungs burning with the sting of salt water and the remnants of flames. Every wave that rocks him reminds him of the precariousness of survival. Every creak and groan of the floating wreckage a reminder of the close call with death. Above, the P-38s approach the rendezvous point, communicating sparingly but clearly, each word weighted with the understanding of what has just transpired. The squadron begins to descend toward their base on Bougainville, carefully navigating over reefs and islands, scanning for Japanese aircraft or anti-aircraft positions. Barber's thoughts drift to the enormity of what they've accomplished. Yamamoto, the mastermind behind Pearl Harbor, orchestrator of countless Japanese campaigns, is dead. Yet the victory is tempered by loss. Hines, still flying, struggles with damage sustained during the fight, his plane barely holding together under the stress. Holmes, ever steady, shadows him, ensuring that their wingman makes it home safely. Barber's own aircraft bears the scars of combat, bullet holes, scorched paint, and the lingering tension of the final approach. But he presses forward, eyes locked on the airfield, heart pounding. As they touch down, the roar of engines replaced by the clatter of wheels on tarmac. Pilots begin exiting their aircraft, their legs weak from hours of evasive maneuvers, their hands sore from gripping controls and firing weapons. Mechanics rush forward, inspecting each plane, cataloging damage, and beginning the meticulous process of repair. Barber climbs out, taking a deep, shuddering breath, the smell of fuel and salt in his nostrils. Holmes follows, offering a brief nod that speaks volumes. Relief, pride, and an unspoken acknowledgement of the thin line they had walked between life and death. Hine lands last, his P-38 barely holding together, a few loose panels flapping in the wind. But the man himself alive, a fragile victory carved from chaos. The debriefing is intense. Maps are spread across tables, photographs analyzed, gun camera footage replayed frame by frame. Every decision, every movement is scrutinized, both for validation and for learning. Barber recounts his pursuit of Yamamoto's bomber in vivid detail, tracing the maneuvers, angles, and timing, describing the tracers flashing past, the feel of the P-38 under his hands, the roar of cannon fire, the heat of enemy shells impacting near his fuselage. Holmes and Hine provide corroborating details, each account filling in the tapestry of that deadly ballet in the skies over Bougainville. The officers nod, their faces taut with concentration, absorbing every lesson that could save lives in the next engagement. Meanwhile, news of Yamamoto's death spreads quickly through both Allied and Japanese ranks. In the United States, the attack is heralded as a strategic triumph, a blow to enemy morale that carries significance far beyond the immediate tactical victory. Newspapers and radio broadcasts relay the story of bravery, precision, and the extraordinary coordination of the squadron. Across the Pacific, sailors, ground crews, and commanders alike speak in hushed awe of the mission, the danger, and the skill demonstrated by Barber, Holmes, and Hine. Celebrations are muted, tempered by the understanding that each act of heroism carries with it the shadow of loss, and that the war still rages vast and unrelenting. On the Japanese side, the news brings shock, grief, and a profound sense of disorientation. Ugaki, recuperating on shore, continues to chronicle his experiences in meticulous detail, documenting every evasive maneuver, every moment when death seemed certain, every instant when he had glimpsed the American pilot's determination. The nation mourns Admiral Yamamoto, holding state funerals with full military honors. Throngs gathering to pay respects to a leader whose loss leaves a void in strategy and morale. Ugaki himself is haunted, surviving the mission only to live with guilt and regret, the memory of his colleagues' deaths and the devastation wrought upon his squadron a constant companion. The squadron, having returned to base, is recognized formally. Barber, Holmes, and Hine received the Navy Cross, their decorations pinned in a solemn ceremony that acknowledges both valor and sacrifice. Each man stands rigid, absorbing the significance of the honor, aware that it comes at the cost of comrades who will never return home. Hine tragically will not survive the journey back, his P-38 succumbing to damage before he reaches safety. A stark reminder of the fragile thread on which life hangs in war. Barber and Holmes will continue to fly, their experiences shaping every decision, every maneuver, every mission that follows, carrying the lessons of Bougainville into the wider Pacific conflict. Years later, Barber returns home, the memory of that day etched indelibly in his mind. The roar of engines, the flash of tracers, the heat of cannon fire, and the sight of Yamamoto's bomber consumed by flames, all remain vivid, indelible, a blend of triumph and trauma. He lives to see the end of the war, to tell the story and to honor those who fought beside him and those who did not survive. July 26, 2001 marks the end of his life, closing the chapter on a man who had faced the deadly skies of the Pacific, who had altered history with courage, skill, and relentless determination. The sun sets over Bougainville, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson, casting long shadows over the airfield where the P-38s have returned, battered but triumphant. Barber climbs from his cockpit, every muscle aching, every nerve tingling from the adrenaline still coursing through his body. Around him, mechanics move swiftly, inspecting every dent, scratch, and hole in the aircraft, noting the scorched panels and the remnants of tracer rounds that had whizzed dangerously close moments ago. Holmes and Hine are beside him, faces streaked with sweat and grime, sharing silent glances that speak volumes, relief, exhaustion, pride, and a quiet understanding of the cost of war. The debriefing room is tense, filled with the low hum of radios and the shuffling of papers. Maps litter the tables, photographs of the enemy formation pinned carefully for review. Barber recounts every maneuver, every split-second decision, describing the chase down to the tree line and the moments when tracers passed so close he could almost feel the heat. Holmes and Hine add their own observations, painting a full picture of the engagement that will be used for training future pilots. The officers take notes diligently, aware that this mission, while successful, carries lessons that could save countless lives in the battles to come. Across the Pacific, news of Yamamoto's death spreads like wildfire. In the United States, radio broadcasts announce the success, praising the bravery, precision, and sacrifice of the pilots involved. Barber, Holmes, and Hine are celebrated as heroes, their Navy crosses awarded in ceremonies that mix solemn pride with personal grief for the lives lost. The strategic impact is immediate. The Japanese fleet loses its most revered tactician, a leader whose absence is felt across every level of command. Morale surges among the Allied forces, though tempered by the recognition of the deadly risks still present in the Pacific theater. In Japan, the shock is profound. Admiral Yamamoto's loss reverberates through the Imperial Navy, sending ripples of uncertainty through an already strained military hierarchy. Ugaki survives, clinging to life and to the memories of his fallen comrades. In the quiet of his recovery, he chronicles the attack in painstaking detail. Each evasive maneuver, every instant of terror, and the relentless aggression of the American pilots etched into his mind. The guilt of survival weighs heavily upon him, an unshakable burden that will accompany him through the remainder of the war. Years later, Barber reflects on the mission and its consequences. He recalls the roar of engines, the flash of tracers, the heat and fury of battle, and the sight of Yamamoto's bomber descending into flames. Every memory is sharp, vivid, and impossible to ignore. He survives the war, carrying the weight of both triumph and trauma, witnessing the victory over Japan and living to share the story of courage and sacrifice. Holmes survives as well, but Hine does not. His aircraft gives out during the return flight, a stark reminder of the razor-thin margin between life and death in aerial combat. Barber passes away on July 26, 2001, closing the chapter on a life marked by extraordinary bravery, unwavering determination, and the indelible imprint of history. The mission against Yamamoto stands as a testament to skill, courage, and the relentless pursuit of duty in the face of near-certain danger. Memorials, histories, and veterans' accounts ensure that the sacrifices of Barber, Holmes, Hine, and the many others who risked everything that day will never be forgotten. The Pacific skies remain quiet now, but the echoes of that fateful April day and the heroism displayed above the waves endure forever.